I'd like to welcome you all here for the How To Talks by Postdocs series. This is our second in our spring series, and today we have the pleasure of hearing Dr. and I apologize, Dr. Itziar Pinilla Macua, who does cancer research, specifically EGF receptor regulation. But today she's going to be talking about how to create a quality scientific poster.
Thank you. So, as Carrie mentioned, today we're going to talk about how to create a quality scientific poster, and I'll give you some tricks and tips to improve on your poster design. So the first thing to know is what is actually a scientific poster, what people is asking for when they ask you to do a scientific poster. So there are so many definitions. One of them is a tool to summarize information or research concisely and attractively to help publicize it and generate discussion. But I think that's way too long. Another, it's a visual presentation of your research results or other types of information as well. But the one I like the most is an illustrated abstract. That means that we are going to move from a plain written abstract, like this, which is not attractive, to something more visual and attractive. So it will help you to discuss your information, and it will give you some imaging support. So we have to keep in mind that it will be an abstract information, but in a bigger format. So how do we transfer years, months of research into a single poster? The main goal is that we have to explain a very short story. So that means that we don't need to include all the information that we have, all the data panels, all the graphs. Just we have to choose the ones that will emphasize our major research points and put them together to fit this short story. We have to use simple figures and graphs so people won't get confused. And it's helpful if it creates discussion, so you will get a lot of input and it will help you moving forward in your research. So the first thing to consider is whether your audience will be competitors, scientists from your same research field, or general audience. So if we have plenty of competitors in the audience or in your meeting, or in those in those conferences or so, you maybe don't want to include any unpublished data or far to be published. So if it's in press or ready to be published, maybe it's okay. But if it's something very in its early stages, maybe you would rather avoid that and try to reorganize your poster. You don't want to have your data spoiled. If you have scientists from the same research field, it's easier because you can avoid including some technical details that they will already know because they are working with more or less the same techniques that you do. So that may save you some room in your poster in the method section that we will talk about later to add some more results, which is more interesting for people. You may also find that you have a general audience, not specialists at all. So in this case, you will need to lower a bit the level of technicisms and like specialized vocabulary, and put it in a way that everybody can understand it. So using less complicated vocabulary and more graphs that make it easier to understand. So the tips for a good poster are: it has to be organized, it has to be concise, and consistent in your layout. So it's not that you're changing fonts in every block of text or anything like that. You have to use figures and graphs in an effective manner. So there's no purpose on adding like any aesthetic picture because you like it if it's not giving you any support on your data. And the most important thing is that the information should be readable at least 10 feet away. At least the most important one, title and headlines. So people that it's passing by will get engaged on your poster and they will stop and ask you about it. So now that we know more or less how to do it, at least the main key points, we have to decide what software we want to use. The main two ones are PowerPoint and Adobe Illustrator. You can also use others, but those two are the winners. So for PowerPoint, the only problem that I see is the color palette at the time of printing, but I usually use PowerPoint. So I found that if you choose RGB palette, then when you print it, you don't have any issues. But with Adobe Illustrator, even though it's more difficult to learn how it works, it gives you more flexibility in the design. So it's really, whatever you feel more comfortable working with, both of them will work fine. So now let's design our poster. We have all the keys. So first we need to find out what size it has to be, because we want it to fit in the panels that they provide. So once we know the size, we can decide if we are going to have it in a horizontal manner or if it's going to vertical. I don't think there's a restriction on that. It's more a personal preference. You see they both have the same section, so title, authors, and affiliation on the top. Then you have background and names, methods, results, more results, conclusions, references, acknowledgements, and you may include some contact information, but that's totally up to you. So they have to be organized in a normal reading format. So here you will start reading like from left to right and then up and down, as the arrow shows. And it should be eye guiding, so that it's easy to follow and just be engaged in the results and what it's being explained. For sizes, this is only like reference size for title, authors, and all the main parts of the text, but it will depend on the size of the actual poster, so as long as it can be read, it's fine. I know some people prefer using like these fancy fonts, but I really encourage people to use plain fonts, so they will be easier to read even from far away. And if you can leave some empty space around text or between figures, so it would give you the appearance of less crowded, and people can be like, it will be easier to read and follow, not so stressing. The use of colors is really encouraged. It makes it more attractive and visual, but we have to be careful on what colors we are choosing, because for instance, if we choose primary colors, we may find that we have blue on red and red on blue, it may be blurry, it may seem blurry. And if we are using yellow fonts or yellow text on top of a clear or white background, it may be difficult to read. And for sure, you have to avoid using very busy backgrounds and too colorful setups, that they will be eye-tiring and people will get stressed out only just by looking at it. So you want to avoid that by all means. Okay, so now we will go section by section. First is the title. It's like your selling part. So it has to be big, bold-faced, and it should be easier to read from anywhere. If you can have a synthetic, a short title that it will capture the attention of people and they don't need to stop and reading and think about what is being said, it's easier, but sometimes that's not possible with science. So I encourage that it should be as understanding as possible and short and big and visible. Right below, you have to name authors. So usually the person that is contributing the most will go the first, and then the last one usually is your PI. And you can also emphasize who's presenting the poster by underlining your name, so it will help people to know who you are. And also you have to include the affiliation. That means in which university, research institute, school, or wherever the research has been done. Okay, so then we move to background. Background just means a brief introduction in your research. I would limit it to up to 250 words, no more, and you may include some of your most relevant references. You don't want to have a lot of references, just the critical ones so people can understand what you're talking about. And then we move to the aims. So the aims is just your working hypothesis. What answers do you want to, what questions do you want to answer? And your aim section can be a section per se, just apart from background, or you can include it as a last paragraph in your background section. It's up to you. Depends on how many aims you have or how you want to extend it, but usually it's just one single sentence. So I normally put it at the end of my background section. Yeah.
Do you recommend for the background, so reprinting your abstract rather than having a whole separate background, or your recommendation have a whole separate background different from the abstract?
Usually when you have your abstract, you have part of your results as well. So people will read it and will decide if they are engaged and they want to go to visit your poster. So you can use, I would use part of the abstract, at least the introductory part. You don't need to have like a whole new introduction section, but I won't use exactly the same abstract that you are using. At least I would just rearrange it in a way that I'm not including any results. So you can extend your results part afterwards in your results section, and you won't give like a small summary in your abstract, so people just may read that and just forget about it. Okay, and then we have our method section. To me, method section, it's only important to include if you are using an innovative technique or a very complicated setup. So if it will help people understanding what your results are or the methodology that you are using, then it's fine. But I would save that room from the method section to include more results. That's my personal view. I know some people prefer to enumerate some techniques that they are using, but if you are using, let's say, Western blotting or something very common, you don't really need to include it because everybody will know more or less how to do that. And you can also add some like traces or some mention what you are using or how it has been done in your figure legends. Not an extensive explanation, but at least this Western blotting or this gel, so they will know what the picture comes from. Okay. So now the result is your star section. So it's the one that you have to put more effort and more emphasis because it's what you have been working with. So to me, it really helps to add a conclusive headline as a title for each figure panel. So that helps you saving some more space because you don't have to explain what the figure is about in your legend. So just by reading the title, people will know what conclusion they should take home with that figure. Also, it's important to use as many figures, graphs as possible that will fit there and will help you to tell your story. And the legend should be short. You don't need to explain all the details of the experiment, just some of the major, like concentration of reagents, something that it's helping people understand what you are showing, what results, how they were done. And the graphs, for instance, should be simple and informative. For example, if we have this graph here, predators versus prey, so here we have a lot of things going on. We have gray background, guiding lines, this legend here. So if we transform it to something like this, it's easier to understand, it has less things going on, and it's clear, and it's exactly the same information in both. So I would encourage this sort of graphs rather than this. It's easier to see.
Could you point out some of the things that are different just to make sure everyone's clear?
Yeah. So here we have this gray background, so it can be some disturbing, and you, depending on the colors that you choose, you may not see them very well. You have all these guiding lines to know like the reference numbers, that you don't really need them, because the information you want to show is like the trend that you see over the days. So it's not important if at day 2 they have 300, as long as you see what's going on with time. Also, the legend has been moved, so instead of having it here, you have right on top of each band, each graph, what the legend is, what it's talking about. And it also has simplified access bars, so you don't really need to have all numbers for every 2 numbers like this, as long as you see the trend. So here the important thing is the trend. You don't really need to get into so much detail. If you want to know exact numbers, you can also mention them in your legends or in another panel of the same figure if you have many different numbers that you want to show. But it's important to show things in a graph form rather than in a table form, which are easier to read. Okay. So usually in your posters, you would like to include a lot of images, a lot of graphs, and it's very important that you are using the proper resolution. That means when you insert your picture in a poster and you are looking at it on the screen, it may look fine. But then when you print it and it's going to enlarge, if you are not using the proper resolution, you may end up with something like this. And you don't want this picture, let's say if it's your main result, and you don't want that image is very low quality and pixelated, because nobody will be able to see what you are trying to say here. So if you use 300 dpi at least, you will get sharp, clear images and people will know what you are showing. And it's also important to include scale bars in all your images, particularly if we are talking about microscopy images, because it can be misleading if you are not including the size, because you may be showing just an organelle, but it's so enlarged that it may look like a cell. So it's really important to know the size of what you are showing. Okay. So now we have conclusion section, and the conclusions are highlight of your major findings, what you can conclude, of course, from your results. And if it's possible, I would include a model. So again, instead of having more text, you will have something more visual, but sometimes it's not possible, so then I would encourage people to use bullet points. So you will have the main conclusions one after the other one instead of a whole paragraph of text. So in that way, people will be more engaged and it will be more easier to understand what are the conclusions that you have from there. Then we have references. If you include some references in your introduction section, then you have to mention them at the end. And I would limit them to 5, maybe 6, but not too many, because you don't want to extend references. You are just showing an abstract in an illustrated form. And of course, and don't forget, you have to acknowledge those who help you in your work. I'm not saying your mom, dad, but just if you went to a microscopy facility and there was a technician there helping you, don't forget to mention their work, because it's good, it's nice. Okay, now we have our poster design. We went through all the sections, but we are not done yet, because we want to have a very good presentation at the time people or the committee comes asking for your job. So there are some more tricks that you may have. The first thing is you should prepare a short explanation of your poster, so it will guide people through your poster. You don't need to explain all the introduction, but at least explain your results, and then all the information that you skipped from the text, you can explain it, and you can mention how the experiment was done, the concentrations that you used, how things were done, all the caveats that you have, how you troubleshoot if they ask. So it's more bidirectional communication, and you should do it short, no more than 5 minutes, because usually people want to visit a lot of posters. So if you take a long time, maybe they will get bored and they will leave. So it's better to make it short and explanatory. If they have questions, then you can extend, but at least your explanation should be short. You can also have ready some mini poster handouts, like printed in a regular paper sheet, but I would not do this in an environment where you have many competitors, or if your data is, as I mentioned, far from being published, because if they already take your information, your data home, they can not reproduce, but if they are into the field, they can try to spoil your work. So be careful with that. It's not something wrong, but I would do it only if results are almost published or in press. And also, I encourage people to include some contact information rather than on the poster, or you can have some business cards ready if they ask you for your contact information. So in this sense, you can favor some collaboration, because if they are interested, they can contact you, and also if somebody has an opening and they like how you present and your work, you may get a job from there.
Before you go on, can I share something just from
Sure.
my experience with posters too? The 3 to 5 minutes is good. Definitely have a short explanation, but there's some people that are kind of come in and say, what is the most important thing? So just know, like, what is your main point? They don't want to listen to the spiel.
Mhm.
Some people want to listen to the spiel because they don't want to take the time to read it themselves. So it's good to have a short one, but know that you're going to get all kind of different people coming to you with different questions. And a lot of people now with the phones just take pictures of your posters, so be aware of that too.
Yeah, in some conferences they restrict that. I mean, it's difficult to restrict people from taking pictures. It's just courtesy and respect from others' work. But if it's like a general big meeting where there are people from different fields, and it's difficult to control that. So in that situation, I would make sure that my data is not the early stages. I mean, that you are not showing very introductory things or very preliminary data, unless you are forced to by your BI, let's say. But you want to have it on your safe side. So now I'm ready to take any questions, although I think it's pretty clear. So if anybody has any comment before we move on to examples. Any questions? No? Yep.
Do you have any preferred color designs or backgrounds? Because I run into having to present to, say, people who are colorblind,
Okay.
and usually I don't accommodate the one person, but it does sometimes come up, and I didn't know if there were standard color pairings that are preferred or good to use.
I never came across that problem with people colorblind, but usually what I do is I choose like, let's say a color, let's say green, red, blue, and then I use different shades on a white background. So to emphasize, let's say the background or introductory section, I have my like square form with the outline a bit darker, and then the background in a shade of blue, just to emphasize the text there. But then results, they are just with a square around, so they will, how do you say it? Like in a way that you emphasize what the result, the figure panel is. So I would put like square around to have your data there, but I would not play with different colors, let's say green, blue, yellow. Usually what I do is choose one color in different shades, or grays sometimes. I don't like putting too much color into it, even for the graphs, but it's difficult to accommodate to everyone. So
Julie, I don't know if you might know this because you teach some of these, but I think there are programs out there where it can translate your poster, if you're doing it on, on a computer, to see what it would look like on a grayscale or something like that. So you could always find some, I don't know offhand what, but
if you Google colorblind color palettes, there are color palettes that show what they look like and then what they would look like, and they have the RGB values, so you can use those
Okay.
if you're worried about it.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thanks.
I never had that. At least as far as I know, I never had that problem. But it's good to know
Yeah.
because there's something that you don't think about. Okay. So now we will discuss some examples. So I would need your help if possible to see what can be improved in these posters. What would you change? What do you think is wrong? So for instance, we have this first one. I think it's pretty obvious, but what can you say about it? The main thing for me is the background and the use of colors. There are so many. Also the title, so it's like in a fancy way, but it's difficult to read with all this shade and all that. Also here they have the abstract and also the introduction, so I think it's like saying the same thing twice. Sorry. So I would take this, like remove this, so I will have more room for my results part, which is this tiny thing here, and they are not including any graphs, any pictures, just some numbers, and I don't think nobody will stop by to read all this and no results. So I don't think that's a very good one. So what about this one? To me, well, here we have the same thing. We have abstract and also introduction. So the introduction has to be brief. You don't want to explain all the literature on your work because there can be thousands of papers and books and other things. So you just want to introduce exactly what you're working with. And here you don't need to include abstract because you already have the same sections as you have in your poster. So there's no point in using all this room just for saying the same thing as you have here. Another thing that you see here is that the writing, the text, has very small fonts, so it's difficult, even though it's in a screen and so on, but it's difficult to read. Good thing is that they have a scheme here for the methods, so it might be helpful. I'm not saying you don't have to include it, but just in this situation when you have like a scheme that may help you follow the results. So they have the legends in a different color. Can be done that way or not, it's personal, but what I would change, for instance, is you don't need so many colors in your graphs. You can use colors, of course, but I would not use them so brightly. Okay. But overall, it's not too bad. I mean, there are others that are worse, like the one before. Another example is this one. So this one looks nice, colorful. The size of the text is fine, but to me it's very difficult to follow because it's not organized. We have objective right here on the top, then background here, results here, methods here, so it's not eye-guiding. You have to like move around from one place to the other.
Can I make a suggestion about
Sure.
something like this too? Because I've been seeing more posters that have broken away from the traditional format. So if you do something like this, which has serious issues, but if you were to do something non-traditional, one thing that would help to guide is if you do like big numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or something like that, so people can kind of follow along. Because you want to engage your audience. You don't want to make them work really hard at what you're trying to talk about. So anything you can do to help.
And the thing is that you know what you're talking about and you know how it should be read because you design it. But somebody that doesn't have anything to do with your work will need to put a lot of effort in trying to figure out what you're trying to say. So what you said, numbers or something like that may help. If you really want to do this like disorganized poster setting. So the good thing is that they have, for instance, objectives or aims with bullet points. So it will define all the questions that they want to answer. They have a short background. But what I found very not bad, but so you have the results here, but the figure legends are so small that you can barely read them. So you don't know the conclusions from the results to which figure they are referring. So it's important to have like all in a way that you can associate the figures or the graphs with the text that you are adding to discuss that figure. Also, they have a very long method section. I think they are like putting into text one of these models. I don't know if it's this one or this one. So I would just put the model and that's it, or just skim. You don't need to include all this huge paragraph for methods unless it is strictly necessary. With the conclusions, it's a small paragraph, it's fine. I would change it to bullet points, but not everyone likes it, so. And another thing is that they have references here that you can barely see them. So it's if you are adding them, I mean, if you are putting some references in your background section, at least they should be read. They should be readable, so people can go back and see what you are mentioning, what the work was about, and if they are interested in following your work or what has been done before.
We even, they're framed labels in their figure are overlapping some of their data, so there's a lot of extra
Yeah.
space and lines that are actually in the way of the point they're trying to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mean here?
No, in the main A through I figure.
Okay.
Yeah, having the long colored lines framed within the,
Oh,
the
yes.
legends within the data.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Not to mention whatever that figure on the far left is, if it's important,
Yeah.
we have no idea what it's saying.
Yeah. So another problem here is that it's using a lot of colors, and if you are using like a setup background, as it looks like here with this bar, I mean, I would frame, if this is important, I would frame it and put a blank white background so you can easily read all of it. So there are many things. Although it looks nice at the first sight, there are a lot of minor things that can be improved. We have this one as well. So I think it looks stressing for me. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not a chemist, but so it has purpose or aim here. You have some techniques, which would be methods, but apart from that, I don't know. So they are using the colors, I guess, to explain things related to transferrin, ferric binding protein, and hemoglobin. So they have like 3 different blocks of information, but then they're just putting some data, no results, or some results, but no explanation of them. So I think there are many points that can be improved here. I forgot to mention, but it's good that you include like the, how do you say that?
Crest.
The crest from your university or your research center. It's something established. And then they have some references from every, well, here they even say unpublished, so if you are adding a reference that nobody can check, then there's no point in that. So this one has a lot of things going on. Besides the colors, as you mentioned, the color blindness, that won't help at all. I think I have one more. Yeah. So that's another example. To me, this one is the one that looks better, although it has some things that should be improved. For instance, this huge method section. So to make it fit in the overall poster, they reduce the fonts, so it's difficult to read. And I don't think anyone needs all this sort of detail in how the experiment was done, because you can always explain some of these things in your figure legends, where they are missing here. They don't have any figure legends. They have this conclusive headline, sort of, but they are not explaining much. So you have to guess what the experiment is about. You can refer to methods, I guess, but I think it's not the main thing. And also, yeah, they are not using a lot of colors, so that's what I was mentioning before. It's not necessarily that you have to use black, white, and gray, but it will make it less stressing if you have like different shades of the same color or like bars or something like that. Then we have conclusions, bullet points. I would try to synthesize a little bit the conclusion sentences so they will be shorter and easier to read. And as you mentioned, if somebody just wants you to explain the main points, you can always refer to conclusions and it would be easier if you have like specific bullet points with some ideas that they are fast to read or fast to get. You have nice acknowledgements. You don't need to extend so much. Usually what I just enumerate people and their affiliation and that's it. And here maybe you have noticed they don't have any references, which is also fine. Usually people add one or two, but if the introduction that you are using doesn't require any references, then you don't have to use them. It's not common, but it can happen. You can also include some future research if you are working with some preliminary data or you already have some ideas of what you want to do next. But this one is not bad at all. There are some things that can be.
I just want to add one thing about the future research. That's the thing you're also going to get asked all the time. Like, so what are you going to do next? So it's good to have something in mind so you're not just fumbling around and it looks like you just negated everything you've done. So.
You don't really need to include it, but at least have some idea of how these results are leading to another project. So more or less, those are the examples that I have, but I have this like tip. So if you have your poster design and you don't know whether it's a good poster or a bad poster, you can always try to play this bad poster bingo and see if you have more than 5, I would say. Just recheck and think about it and maybe you can improve it and just go back, print it, read it again. There are always some minor things that you can improve, so don't design and just send it to print. Just read and print and sleep on it and then go again because they require a lot of work. And you can ask somebody to check it or to see if they can read it, if they can understand, and all these things help. But you have to have clear what you want to say and have this short story told. And that's it. So if there are any other questions, I would gladly.
Let's say you're going somewhere where you have a lot of competitors. What's the best way to kind of balance like putting things on your poster versus selectively holding stuff back?
That's a difficult question. So usually it's the PI call, but what I would say if your data is pretty preliminary, I would rather put more schemes or show what you want to do, but not so I will keep back some of the information in terms of technical things that may be critical on your results. So let's say you are growing some cells, some specific cells, and you found that you need to add a supplement on your media so they will grow better, for instance. Just don't say that.
Okay.
So, I mean, you are giving the information, but there are some things that if they really want to know, they can find out as you did.
Right.
But you can just say that you don't have enough room.
Okay.
But it's difficult to balance sometimes. It's better if you have all of the information almost to be submitted and published, so you don't have to hold back many things. But it's difficult. Any other questions? Comments?
Well, before we finish, how many of you have not yet presented a poster? Okay, that's what I wondered. So hopefully you got some good ideas, so you're off to a good start. And hopefully those of you who have presented have gotten some ideas that will help improve your subsequent posters.
I mean,
So.
there's not a strict setting that you have to use, but you have to think about your audience and that it has to be easier for people which is not working on your field or doing your work. It has to be easier for them to understand and to follow and to see what you are doing so they can show that they are interested. If it's really boring or it's really technical and they cannot really understand what you are talking about, then they will just forget about it. So that's important.
And don't use all your words. Like, you need to have explanations, but don't have paragraphs of things. No one wants to, do you want to read that? No, no one wants to read that.
Yeah, unless you are interested, let's say, in a panel that you have some graphs with bars. Then you have to explain a little bit more what these bars are about or what the experiment was about. But that's what I mentioned. You are going to explain people what the poster is about. So you don't need to have a huge paragraph saying this graph is about this, that, and what we conclude, because you're going to say that, so you don't have to have it written there. And if anybody needs some more information, they can always contact you, and it's good. It's collaborations and all that. So,
Well, if there isn't anything else, I'd like to thank you for your presentation.